24-hour surveillance, including panic buttons. We're going to ensure the area is well lit and that folks will be clearing the property in the morning as intended. In addition to that, we want to really focus on beautification of the neighborhood this year, so ensuring that there are nothing left outside and everything is tucked away nicely as intended. And we also have really diversified and focused on staff training this year. So there will be a comprehensive training package offered to all employees working at our shelters, not just the Out of the Cold shelter, but there will be a full day of training. And we want to, this year, really work on providing a service that, yes, is meeting the emergent need, but is also providing additional supports. So that's why we've roped in services like public health will be joining us certain evenings, as well as 2 outreach workers from the John Howard Society, in addition to our own outreach team, and of course our 2 staff will be on site the entire time.
I'll open the floor if there are questions or comments from the council. I guess I have to do a couple more, seeing no other lights coming on. I do, one of the concerns I've heard from the community, some of the neighboring businesses, I guess, is a concern about the loitering outside of the building and potentially that spillover of that loitering or trespassing onto adjacent properties. Can you speak a little bit about, what's the policies around, like, are the people that will be staying there allowed to be outside, both during the 8 to 8 operating hours and the other hours, and what systems or policies are in place to discourage them from wandering onto other neighboring properties?
So we have connected with Miramichi Police Force, and they will be doing additional rounds of the area to ensure that there is no loitering happening. But in addition to that, it isn't necessarily a Miramichi Housing Solutions matter. If someone's trespassing on your property or if there is illegal activity transpiring, then that would be a police matter. However, we certainly are doing our best to ensure that the area is cleared in the morning and that folks have a place to go or that they have something to engage in during the day. We're really focusing on preventing that loitering piece this season. And in addition to that, I would like to touch upon a model such as this really does take people out of the vestibules. It takes them from sleeping in the benches in the park. It takes them from sleeping on perhaps the business's front doorstep. And it offers them shelter. And they're ultimately going to choose that over sleeping outside. Furthermore, when we discuss, perhaps some, having to resort to dumpsters for food, we will be providing meals on site. And so we're going to see a decrease in all of that activity. And that's the aim. And we're going to be transparent. It's not going to be perfect. And that's not what we're promising here. But we're working with the community to make a safer and better community.
I know one of the, concerns or questions I've been getting as well from members of the community is about the site selection or site choice. And maybe you can speak a little bit about what is the criteria that Miramichi Housing Solutions was looking for in a site, and maybe what, verifying that other sites were considered, and then also why ultimately was this the preferred site for Miramichi Housing Solutions that brought you to ask the city to use that piece of property?
Oh, absolutely. Many sites were explored and unfortunately unavailable. So we have a great team working on this Out of the Cold shelter project. It's not just Miramichi Housing Solutions. We have several professionals sitting at the table, and it is a priority for us to offer.
Oh, Justin is presenting on that. Is that what you just said?
Yes, the councillor asked. I'm not sure what the technician was saying was, whether it was the mic or not.
The mic wasn't on, but I guess if Mr. Forbes is planning to present this, he can ask it later. I wasn't sure if Samantha was presenting all of it. Okay. Sorry.
Is there anything you would like me to repeat? Was there any other information that was missed?
No, that's okay.
So Justin will be speaking regarding the location?
Yeah, I can speak to the.
Yeah, although if you maybe would like to just speak to it from the emergency housing solutions perspective, like what is the criteria that you can probably outline the process, but what do you look for in an ideal site?
Yes, so we had explored many options. And as I was saying earlier, there's an incredible team of professionals sitting around at this table. These aren't snap decisions. These are decisions that are well thought out with the entire community in mind. And so while exploring our various options and having many doors closed in our face, what really came to light here and what really spoke to our organization and the other service providers involved was a modular project. And really impressed to say it sounds like this is paving new ground provincially. We aren't able to find many like it regarding in out of the cold emergency response. And so we needed a location that was fit and equipped to handle those modular units. And unfortunately, 15 Jane Street had met that criteria. So yes, so many other options were explored, and this is where the path has led.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Arsenault.
Thank you so much for everything that everyone's done to get us here. I know it's been a lot of work and done in a short time. Just a couple questions and the questions that I've gotten from others in the community. Is there a curfew that you must be there before a certain time or by a certain time?
Absolutely. And so like anything, it's important to know that this isn't willy-nilly. There's rules and there's policies that everyone must adhere to and respect. And so right now the board is working on a process that makes the most sense for our client base, but it is looking that check-in starts as early as, of course, 8 p.m. and perhaps no later than 10 p.m., 11 p.m. at latest.
Thank you. And last question, there was some concern actually around the number of beds, that it might not be enough for our need.
Yeah, so that's very interesting because we tend to hear both sides of that. It's too many beds, it's not enough beds. And I just want to assure everyone that we base our bed count on data collected throughout the year. So this isn't, again, just a number we pull from the air. And we do also have a plan in place that if number 16 shows up, that they are also cared for.
Thanks again for
No trouble.
One last question from me for you, Sam. Is there, in the operating plan, you mentioned surveillance, is there going to be on-site security?
No, our staff will be acting as a security and safety operations as well.
Okay. And is that like a standard operating procedure for this type of facility, or?
Yes. So we've been in the shelter business interestingly 25 years this year. And so our staff are trained and equipped to handle those safety and security matters. And obviously, thankfully, if it is exceeding our capacity, we do have an emergency police force who's been an incredible partner with our service.
Okay, perfect. I do know from speaking with the provincial minister today as well that if we should start down with this shelter, and we may find that additional security resources are warranted on site in addition to your staff and the police, that they would be willing to provide that as part of their funding of the facility. So I would just leave that with you.
Fantastic. And we cannot stress enough that everybody's safety is our priority. So if that is an option, an avenue that we need to take, we most certainly will be.
Thank you. Any other questions for... I keep forgetting your last name, Sam, which is why I usually always refer to people formally.
Fairweather.
I apologize. Thank you, Ms. Fairweather. I see that, so I would invite maybe, and if there are some later, we can invite you back. But if Mr. Forbes has a presentation or would like to add additional comments about the site selection process, we can do that now. And Ms. Fairweather, if you do have any other comments you want to make, please feel free.
I just want to say thank you to multiple people, but first we'll start with the community. This has been an incredibly positive response overall. We've received countless messages how people can aid and support and get involved, and it really has been a year of change when it comes to looking at and supporting the unhoused community. So I really want to acknowledge and recognize those positive responses because it truly takes a village. And in addition to that, I would just like to take a moment to acknowledge the devotion and hard-working staff at Emergency Housing Solutions and the endless hours they put in the service wouldn't exist without them and their incredible board of directors. So yeah, just taking a moment to highlight the hard work that's being done, and of course, our community partners, the City of Miramichi, social development, and you know, public health, really everyone who has had a hand in bringing this project to life.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilman?
Mr. Brooks?
Okay, thank you. So I was asked to speak about the process used to find a location for the Out of the Cold shelter response and to highlight the parties that were involved. So I prepared a bit of a written summary just to keep things concise, but can provide further details if there are any questions. So in September 2023, I became aware of the looming need for the Out of the Cold shelter and the required response plan. It was pretty evident to me that there were multiple groups engaged in the process of establishing an emergency shelter for the cold winter month season, both last year, and that again would be the case in 2023. However, there was, at least in my opinion, no single party kind of taking the lead to coordinate that effort. I kind of saw it as a gap and an opportunity for the Housing Authority to create a bit of a collaborative forum for the involved parties to coordinate efforts, exchange ideas, and formulate a plan for the approaching season. In late September, there was a meeting organized involving the Government of New Brunswick, Social Development, Miramichi Housing Solutions, the City of Miramichi staff, Horizon Health, as well as the Salvation Army. And the objective was to initiate collective discussions. The group is targeting a shelter availability date of December 1st, which gave the team just about 45 days to get something in place. So over the following weeks, we scheduled regular meetings to convene the involved parties, consider various options, and planning the coordination of the Out of the Cold response. In total, the group had 9 meetings. The options under consideration included using an existing city or provincially owned building, renting privately owned space, purchasing a modular building, or renting a mobile trailer or trailers. Each option was assessed based on a set of pros and cons, considering factors such as costs, location and space availability, the implementation timeline, proximity to other land uses and potential opposition, compliance with Fire Marshal's Office and National Building Codes, requirements for guest transportation to and from the shelter, potential for service integrations, as well as the guest's dignity and other considerations. While several options were considered, the general preference for location leaned towards the Newcastle area, but away from the immediate downtown core. Others may be able to elaborate on it a bit better than I can, but the idea of the shelter being low barrier access, as well as this concept of kind of meeting people where they're at, really resonated with the group. As well, it was actually a program specification put forward by social development for the operation of the shelter. From my observation, Newcastle is really seemingly the place where individuals experiencing homelessness frequent. I think it's probably due to various reasons, including access to the variety of public spaces in the downtown, parks and libraries as an example, the food bank, transit, proximity to community and government resources like the Salvation Army and social development offices, the existing adult emergency shelter, folks using the shelter, their existing social connections, as well because of the employment opportunities and employment resources available in the area. In my view, utilizing an existing city or provincially owned building or renting private commercial space would have been the most expedient and cost-effective option. However, as Sam mentioned, finding a private property owner willing to host the shelter posed quite challenging. The group considered around a dozen, perhaps even 24 locations. Some community groups and faith-based organizations were either unavailable or uninterested. Additionally, modifications required by the Fire Marshal's Office or building code regulations for an occupancy change rendered certain spaces impractical for a temporary shelter. As the group continued to meet and explore options, it became evident that a temporary modular option was viable. It sidestepped the need for a private property owner's approval, as the city or province could provide a location. As well, the option fell within the operational requirements and funding allocated by Government of New Brunswick Social Development for the response. A review of government-owned property led the group to determine that 15 Jane Street would be suitable. It offered enough land area for multiple trailers, was flat and vacant, serviceable with municipal water and sewer connections. It was situated in the Newcastle neighborhood, but outside the BIA, and was owned by the city. And ultimately, this location and option were firmed up and are continuing to be finalized. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Forbes. Are there any questions on the matter? Mr. Forbes, yes, Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mr. Forbes, you said that the first meeting you had on establishing it out of the coal shelter for Miramichi, when was that again?
September 28th.
September 28th. So last year, when we had an out of the coal shelter at the Linden Rec Center, there were numerous concerns. This was already alluded to. There were concerns with the proximity of local businesses. There were concerns with proximity to the rink, kids going to the rink. There were concerns, and I explicitly expressed them about security at the Linden Rec Center. We all knew winter was coming this year. Winter's coming, you don't want to quote the movie, but we didn't have a meeting until when again?
September 28th.
September 28th, to get ready for November. And in that time, over 45 days, you had 9 meetings from September 28th. We know it's going to be cold at the end of November, December, and folks are going to have to go someplace, many of whom are homeless, many of whom have addiction issues. And you had meetings with 12 different places over a 45-day period, but we knew there was going to be issues since last year. Why was it only done 45 days before?
Yeah, Councillor Johnston, the manager would like to answer that question.
So we were proceeding on the basis that the province of New Brunswick was going to put together a housing plan that would give guidance to all communities, including ours. We were told that that plan would come out in June. It didn't come out in June. It didn't come out in July. And by August, we realized it wasn't coming. And that's what motivated the parties who had been involved in previous years to get themselves together. And I can advise you, it was at that meeting that the province of New Brunswick first advised all the players that the province considers homelessness a community problem and not a provincial problem for the first time. That's what we were advised. And we were told basically it was up to the community to put these together. So the timeline was based on an assumption that the province was taking the lead. And as Justin says, you know, we were looking to follow and work with them. It didn't play out like that. We sort of, you know, full as one, shame on you, full as twice, shame on us kind of thing. We are not going to, we've already had talks that the next stage, the permanent shelter part that this community needs, have to start. And this group does not intend on disbanding after this project is done, based on what we've learned about the role of the provincial government moving forward. This is our problem to solve, is what we've been told.
Okay, so I appreciate that insight, City Manager, but I can't help but know, just for the interest of the public, that homelessness, I've been told, homelessness, I know housing is a shared responsibility between the municipality and the province, but homelessness per se would be a provincial issue primarily. So what you're telling me is that the first meeting was supposed to happen in June, it was postponed to July, and then by the time September rolled around, the province told us that essentially homelessness was a community-based problem and the responsibility of the city of Miramichi. Am I hearing you correctly?
Parts of what you're reaffirming are true, and I think that's the concern that we have had. Manager and I actually had this conversation this afternoon. Like, so for most of the beginning of 2023, we were waiting on this provincial homelessness strategy, which we had been told, all of the cities across New Brunswick had been told, this strategy would identify what is the province's responsibility and that they would be primarily responsible for the issues of homelessness, and what role municipalities would be expected to play to support those efforts. So that report never came, and in fact, the current position of the provincial government is that it won't be made public and won't even be shared with municipalities. So we continue to call on them to make the strategy public. But again, this was a document that was supposed to guide the rules, and I think Mr. Forbes touched on that also when he said in September he felt, and as did we, that there was not somebody stepping up into a leadership role to guide a selection process. From my perspective, that should have been a provincial government entity. And again, to their credit, they've come to the table with the financial component, but they haven't come in a leadership role of facilitating, identifying that property. So I think we, to the manager's point, we identify now that in lieu of them taking that role, we don't want to be in this position again. And we also don't really want to continue down a path of out of the cold shelters. Like this is a Band-Aid solution and not a long-term solution. So we want to work with Miramichi Housing Solutions to help them identify their new long-term permanent home. They have funding to have increased permanent beds and ideally a location that could flex up in the winter if needed. So that would all happen in one new self-contained place that unfortunately they are not able to find a new permanent larger location this year either. In time for that to be the solution for this winter. So a number of things that were not in our control, unfortunately, ran the clock a bit late, which is why in September, Mr. Forbes and the working group got to work in the absence of the province effectively leading those efforts.
Right, and I would agree with Mr. Ford, based on your comments and your comments as well, Your Worship, that we did have a problem here, and it wasn't a money problem on behalf of the province. It was a leadership problem. It was a leadership problem because last year we knew that, to quote yourself, a temporary Band-Aid solution would not work for homelessness in Miramichi. We had issues at the Linden Rec Center. We knew winter was coming, but we waited until September before the cold weather hit in November, before the province came online and actually got a homelessness program in place in the community. It's not an issue with the local staff. The local staff are dedicated, they're passionate, they're giving it their all. It's not an issue with the money, but it was an issue with overall leadership in terms of addressing the issue of homelessness on the part of the province in this municipality. And that is disappointing. It is disappointing in the sense that, yes, we have to be compassionate and empathetic, and I'll be the first one leading the charge to help the most desolate in our community have a warm, safe place to live in the wintertime. And it does take a village, but it also takes a provincial government that is going to demonstrate leadership and timely intervention to make sure it gets the job done. And I hope that will improve next year, because winter is coming. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. And I think from our perspective, we're hoping to find a permanent, year-round, increased capacity solution that this will look much different next year. But thank you. Councillor Harris.
Yeah. Thank you, Your Worship. I know Stan mentioned working with Polly as a police force with their chief. Do you have any words, Chief, this evening?
Yeah, through the chair, Councillor Harris. It's already been touched on. Obviously, a lot of the issues last year was the loitering after hours. When in the morning, when the shelter shut down, and I know Ms. Fairweather has mentioned that, and she was in touch with my office this morning, and we are certainly going to be proactive on that front to ensure that that doesn't happen. So, working with Miramichi Housing Solutions and ourselves, and we will probably engage our bylaw officers as well if they're in the area. And so between all parties, we certainly want to curb that issue this year. So we will be proactive on that front.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you to Stan and all our staff and Justin tonight for coming with the information, I guess, that was not week or so, but you know what, it's well worth I think the time, and you know, if you do take a beating, it's well worth it for the people that's gonna be helped here this winter, and kudos to everybody that have been involved, and I think, you know, at the end of the day, we are a better city with it, and to help people, and well done. So,
Thanks, Councilor Harris, for that comment as well. I guess I would maybe just have a question for the chief as well. Chief, maybe you did touch on the loitering issue specifically. Maybe beyond that, or more broadly, I guess could you speak to the experience for the full, for Miramichi Police from last year, maybe, and what you've gained in experience and how that might be implemented in this year from your perspective, not just for the shelter itself, but I know that in particular, the adjacent business hotel is concerned about, there already is a presence of homelessness in that area, which I understand from speaking to them, your team is engaged there quite regularly already. But just, maybe to speak a little bit about from last year to this year, from what you already do down there into what, again, may change or not change as it relates to the rolling out of the cold down in that location.
So, through the chair, it was mentioned earlier, last year was, I guess, a first-year experience for the community, as well as Miramichi Housing Solution, as well as for our police force, as far as being engaged with the cold shelter. So, all in all, with the exception of the loitering issue, we did not have a great number of calls to the Linden Rec Center itself with regards to the clientele that were staying there, which is a good thing. So we have engaged our community services officer who works Monday to Friday during the day, and he will be proactive as well in his role in community services, and touching base with the businesses, which he has started to do. We have a new officer in the community services office, Constable Jason LeBoy, and he has been meeting with the president of the Downtowns Association and going around door to door to each business, speaking with the business owners and the managers, and finding out what the issues are at hand. So we're also looking to get feedback from them as far as what issues they see front and center. So I guess all in all, to put it in a nutshell, we will be more proactive this year, knowing what the issues were last year. And, based on that, hopefully we can find some common ground and solutions for those issues. And, we're hoping on the whole, most will be cooperative.